Hello and welcome to another review here on Theme Park Worldwide. In this video I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on the beast that is Nemesis, an inverted roller coaster located at Alton Towers in Staffordshire here in the United Kingdom. Now Nemesis opened in 1994 and was manufactured by Bolliger Mabillard, of course a Swiss company that are very famous for a lot of their roller coasters that they've built all around the world. In terms of where it's located at Alton Towers, it's within the Forbidden Valley themed area of the park, which is right at the back of Alton Towers. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with Nemesis and its location, but with these reviews, I always like to share the full details on where it's located, the themed area, and kind of share my thoughts on that. And with Alton Towers, it really is a special park for that, because I'll share this information for those of you that might not be aware. Alton Towers aren't actually allowed to build anything above the tree height. Things have to be hidden away so they can actually get planning permission because of the area where Alton Towers is located. So, you know, that's what makes Alton Towers rides really fascinating. And they often, much like with Nemesis, dig down into the ground so that they can make a longer and bigger ride, because without doing that, the layouts would not be great at all. So over the years, Alton Towers has become famous for digging down with various different rides. They did it in 2002 with Air, 1998 with Oblivion, and even some of the newer rides like 13 and the Smiler. They've all got sections that are actually dug underground so they can have a bigger layout, and of course make the lift hills a little bit taller so that you know, it's starting lower and heading up out of the ground. So that's what's always made Alton Towers very special. But that started really with Nemesis back in 1994. And this ride, the location of it in Forbidden Valley, once you've walked up to there, I mean, it takes maybe 15 minutes to walk there from Tower Street if you're going at a nice gentle pace. And by the time you get into Forbidden Valley and you're greeted by the Nemesis entrance archway, you really built up for the anticipation of this ride. I've been on Nemesis thousands of times and I still get excited when I walk down past all the rocks and see the Nemesis sign there in front of me. It really is fascinating. And then of course you turn the corner and there it is in front of you, the beast that is Nemesis. Now, in terms of the storyline for this ride, it's based on this alien creature what's been excavated out of the ground, and during some like routine restoration work they've sort of found this alien during the construction, and there it was, and that's what the ride is all based on. Now, of course, Nemesis is also part of the secret weapon program at Alton Towers that still happens to this day. The newest secret weapon, of course, was SW8 Wicker Man that opened in 2018. But yes, the secret weapon program actually goes back to 1994 when we first heard of it anyway, and that was the opening of Nemesis Secret Weapon 3. Secret Weapon 1 and 2 were actually never built at Alton Towers. They were plans for a ride to go on the site where Nemesis stands today, but at the time John Wardley rode a prototype by Aerodynamics, another manufacturer, and found the ride to be too boring and not really do a lot. He then went to Six Flags, rode an inverted coaster from Bolliger Mabillard, and thought that is the ride for Alton Towers, and that's why we have Nemesis to this day. So just thought I'd share a bit of a backstory into why this ride is so fascinating and so many people rate it so highly. It's not just because of the ride experience, it's because of the whole backstory and how it came about, putting in such a beast of a coaster, especially at its time in 1994, in a park what couldn't build above the tree height. It really is fascinating. But the design of the area is absolutely beautiful, because they've actually dug right down into the ground to build this giant pit, which must have cost an absolute fortune, but that really adds to the experience, because as you make your way down into the queue line, then you really start to feel the ambience of the area, because you're going straight down into this pit. So yes, you've gone in through like the entrance tower, what they've got there, which is all very mysterious. Lots of like metal structures and things that don't really make a lot of sense as you make your way down into the queue line. And what makes it is that first section of the queue line, you're queuing down next to the rock face, where you can tell it's all been dug out and excavated to actually build this roller coaster. Now you make your way down underneath what is the first inversion of the ride, the corkscrew just above you. And if you time it right, when you're walking down there and you hear the coaster roaring in the distance coming down the drop and it emerges in front of you, it really is a spectacular experience. Even when you've been on it thousands of times like I have, and I'm sure quite a few other people have, if not thousands, at least hundreds, with Nemesis. We're very lucky to have this ride in the UK. You make your way down further in the queue line, you get great views over towards the alien monster itself that of course has been excavated, and that is of course the station building for Nemesis. Along with that as well, you get great views of the rest of the coaster from there and just the surrounding area, which is brilliant, and this monster just sort of appearing out of this giant pit. Something that does really add to the ambience is the fantastic audio as well. You're walking down the queue line, it's blasting out nice and loud, and that really adds to it. And when you get into the station building, the audio changes slightly with the fact that you've got some announcements that are actually added in there as well. Now also you've got the waterfalls that trickle down the rock face. They actually used to be red and they used to look absolutely fantastic. I'm gutted that Alton Towers stopped that. You know, it's a real shame, but yeah, they used to have all the red waterfalls. The waterfalls are still on to this day. Yeah, they seem to be one of them things that some days they're not turned on, maybe other days they are. It's a shame because they're such a big part of the experience. I would love to see them red again, but I believe it's down to some sort of environmental concerns, should we say, that there's no longer red waterfalls. But it is a shame about that because it used to really add to it, trickling down, especially on the first drop before it goes up into the first corkscrew. You then make your way further down into this pit where you're greeted by this enormous hole where you've got the vertical loop for the ride, and then of course you can carry straight on up into the queue line where you do a turnaround section and back towards the station building, of course, where you're going to board onto Nemesis. So at this point we've not even got onto the ride and you've got this amazing experience going through the archway, the music all throughout the queue line, seeing this coaster and actually standing in the queue line. You know, you're looking down at the ride, you're looking up at the ride. It makes it feel a lot taller than it actually is from the queue line. And then of course you make it into the station building itself for Nemesis. Now once you get inside the station, you kind of expect it from the outside to look like a big slimy alien monster actually inside, but it's not really. You've got like the jaws, you can see Nemesis teeth down there at the front, especially if you're on the front row, kind of around the sides, and of course you go out of the mouth before going up the lift hill. But yeah, inside it's mostly just like metal, sort of corrugated, bit of an industrial style theme inside the station. I think that's one thing that they could maybe improve in the future if Nemesis was to have a refurbishment in terms of with the theming, and I know it was repainted a few years ago, but like a bigger overhaul was planned, then yeah, that's maybe one thing I'd like to see improved inside the station building, possibly you know, making it look like the inside of this slimy monster and have maybe like slime effects, and you have like the sound of a heart beating in the distance. Maybe go along those sort of lines as a bit of an improvement. But overall, it's still got a great atmosphere in the station, like I say, with them announcements blasting out as well. Now, Nemesis can accommodate 32 riders per train. It runs 2 trains, and then that, of course, means 8 rows with 4 people per row. It's got the standard B&M over-the-shoulder restraint. Of course, when I say B&M, I am referring to Bolliger Mabillard. That's just a shortened down version of it that a lot of people use. But yes, it's got your standard over-the-shoulder restraint. Pretty comfortable. You put your seatbelts in as well for some extra security, and yeah, pretty comfortable, nice and roomy, of course, loads of leg room because it's an inverted coaster, and then you're ready to go on the beast that is Nemesis. Now, in terms of my favourite rows on this, front row is great, especially at night for the views. But for me, it's a back row right seat for me because I find it the most intense part of the ride. Nemesis is a coaster that really varies a lot depending on the time of the day, the weather conditions and what seat you're on. If you want a nice intense ride experience, if it's raining, get yourself on the back row, especially on the right seat, and it whips you around them inversions. It really does. Fantastic. It gets me excited just talking about it. Can't wait to get back on Nemesis. You know it's a good ride when you just can't stop talking about it. You know, it really gets you in the mood for coasters, that ride. Then of course the floor lowers again, which is quite dramatic, and you are dispatched straight out, a nice right hand turn, and you start to ascend the lift hill. Now, like I've mentioned before, the Alton Towers can't build above the tree height, and that's why the lift hill was designed to sit comfortably on the hillside, meaning that it's not actually very tall. The lift hill is only 43 foot tall off the ground. That is nothing for a coaster of this size. You would expect it to be huge, maybe at least 80, 90 foot tall, but no. 43 feet for the lift hill, and of course as you're making your way up there through the trees, you leave the rest of the coaster behind you. You can't see anything at all other than up into the trees. And then of course you do a little bit of a mini dip off the top of the lift hill, quite a standard B&M move, bank round to the left hand side, and then there you go, you're starting to make your way down this pretty long drop, which isn't very steep at all. It's just very gradual, but it really builds up the speed there as it makes its way into the first inversion, which is a right hand corkscrew. And when you get into that right hand corkscrew, especially on the back row, you are whipped through it with quite some speed. That's something that always amazes me with Nemesis, is how quick it builds up the speed from the top of the lift hill to that first inversion. I know there's quite a change in elevation there, the fact you've gone up the hill and then you're going round and gradually going down, but there's no big drop to get you up into that corkscrew. It's very gradual, and that's kind of what makes it, because it really enters that corkscrew very fast, especially on the back row. Now, once you come out of the fantastic first element of this ride, the first inversion, you then make your way, bank round to the right-hand side into a 270-degree downward helix. That's probably the most intense part of the ride at that point, especially once you've gone round part of that helix, and then you're right down at the bottom next to the rocks. And that's where I really want to point out the location of this ride really makes it. If Nemesis was just built on a standard flat piece of land, it would still be a good coaster, but it wouldn't be anywhere near what it is and world renowned. It's because of the location. It has been dug out of this pit, which is absolutely incredible. And I think sometimes people don't appreciate that fact, how much work went into building Nemesis and how much cost was involved in removing all of that ground. It was actually, back in the days of Alton Towers, a car park there, which is incredible. Like, that was a car park where Nemesis is now. It was completely flat. You wouldn't think it, but yeah, it was completely flat where Nemesis is now. So after you come out of that 270-degree downward helix, you straight up past the on-ride photo point into a 0G roll. Again, moves through there at quite a nice pace through the 0G. On the back row, you know, it's really intense at that point. But on the front row, you get a great view of the Nemesis monster, because, of course, this 0G roll is built directly above the station, and the station is themed to the alien creature. So yeah, you get a good view. You can see like his eye and stuff on the side as you go up into the 0G roll, which of course is a brilliant inversion. I'd say that's my favourite inversion on the ride, actually, out of the four that Nemesis offers. It's just, you know, that feel of going up from low down in all the rocks to then being on top of the station and feeling very exposed at that point. I feel like that's what makes it for me on that section. At that point, you then make your way up into a 180-degree stall turn to the right. Now, the stall's great because, again, you've got a waterfall just underneath and you've got all the different rocks there. And sometimes, if they haven't cut back the planting very well, you can feel your feet actually brush against some of the planting which is underneath there, some of the shrubbery, which I've had on numerous occasions, especially during this season. Maybe because of, you know, the lockdown earlier this year and some of the trees getting longer and stuff. Many times the bottom of my feet just brushed against some of the planting there. You know, it's not going to cause any harm, just a little bit of plants, but they do ride checks as well to make sure. But obviously there was quite a few times where you can just feel your feet brushing gently against some of the shrubbery underneath, which again adds to the Nemesis experience, really. You come out of that stall turn and then you've got quite a big drop then right down into this pit. That's like the deepest part of this pit for Nemesis, because you're going straight up into the vertical loop. It's the third inversion on the ride and it's absolutely incredible. On the front, you push straight up into that loop at quite some speed. On the back, you make your way up into it quite fast, but then it's nice and slow over the top, and then you whip straight out of it as well. Like I say, for me, Nemesis is definitely a back road coaster. It certainly makes it. You've just gone through that fantastic vertical loop. You're straight through a tunnel then into another turnaround section, another stall, which the train really starts to slow down a little bit here. It loses quite a bit of momentum at this point, but normally a coaster like that would sort of lose the momentum and then it'd keep getting slower and then it'd hit the brakes. But Nemesis isn't like that, the way it's been designed. You do that turn, and then you actually make your way through another tunnel, and then you're straight up into the final inversion, the fourth one on the the ride, and that's a second corkscrew that you've got. And this one is brilliant because it was actually designed at eye level, so people can stand right next to it on a pathway, next to the bus what there is at the side, and you can actually look directly at this inversion, which is perfect, beautifully designed. And when you're on the ride, you really feel like your feet are going to bash against the rocks, bash against this bus, which is sort of falling off the cliff face at the side, smoke coming out of it. Oh, just the ambience of it really makes it for Nemesis. Can you tell this is how excited this ride makes me? It really does. You know, but yeah, you really feel like your feet are just going to bash against the rocks at numerous points. But on that final corkscrew, that fourth inversion, you certainly feel it. You really do going up into that. It's fantastic. It really is. After that, you then make your way into another turnaround, a 180-degree turnaround, and then, of course, into the brake run. So Nemesis is an action-packed ride. There's so much that goes on within the layouts. It might not be one of the longest inverted coasters out there, but it'll always be known as probably the most unique. I can't think of another one out there that's as unique as Nemesis, and that's why it stays so special. I've been on loads of B&M inverted coasters now all across the world, but Nemesis is still the most unique, and it just feels the most authentic. The fact that it's been dug down into that pit, the whole storyline with this restoration work and excavating the ground to actually find this monster, you know, and honestly, the whole thing comes together and gets me really excited. So there's nothing I would change in terms of the ride itself. However, in terms of the theming, like I say, you know, there's a few bits that I would love to see them improve. The station building, I think they could do more with the inside. I did really appreciate Alton Towers a few years ago when they repainted the track and the supports. They actually painted the rust back on as well. So you've got to think, a lot of people look at Nemesis and think, oh, it's all old, it's all rusty. That is painted on, don't worry, it's not actually rusting. All the rust is painted on as part of the effect. Once they actually did a full repaint a few years ago, they painted fake rust back onto it to add to the experience. So that's what makes it, yes, you know, you've got this grey track, but yeah, they've painted the rust on. And the station was all fixed up and repainted as well on the outside. But yeah, I'd love to see maybe some improvements done to the inside of the station, maybe like a dispatch sequence, possibly, a bit like Wicker Man has a dispatch sequence, something like that possibly now. Back in '94, that wasn't really a big thing at theme parks, maybe at Disney, but apart from that, it wasn't. So they could maybe look at doing that to do some more improvements. But in terms of the ride itself, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's Nemesis at Alton Towers. Sit back, it's fright time, and what an incredible ride. Just want to say it's still by far my favourite roller coaster at Alton Towers. There's been times where my opinions fluctuate at Alton Towers, like the Smiler in 2013. I really enjoyed it, but I think I just got a bit too excited in 2013, thinking it was something absolutely amazing, which it's a great ride. It's very unique how it's all been fit into a very small space again and beautifully designed, but there's still a lot of parts of that what just aren't Nemesis. You know, Nemesis is the one. It's the beast. It's beautiful. It really is. It's a stunning ride, and I'll always remember my first ride on it when I was a kid and absolutely being terrified walking down the queue line, but you know, ever since I just kept riding it, and yeah, last year of course I did over 60 rides on it in one day when I did a challenge video here on the channel. So yeah, it really has been it's an emotional ride for me. It's the one that made me want to get out there, keep on riding and go and see some different rides and coasters all around the world. So there we go. Let me know your thoughts on Nemesis at Alton Towers down below in the video comments. Of course, there's Nemesis Inferno at Thorpe Park. I've already filmed a review from that earlier this year. You know, it's definitely worth checking that out if you've not already seen it, so you can hear my thoughts on how I compare the two. However, with my love for Nemesis, the original Alton Towers, the 1994 beauty, I think you'll soon realise that, yeah, that's going to be the far superior ride for me over Nemesis Inferno any day. But there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts down below in the video comments. And that leaves me with one final thing to say. Get out there and keep on riding. See you all in the next video.